Marcus Alston. I'm the host of the Mindful Athletes podcast. This is episode 12. I'm joined today by Alston for Athletes advisor and CEO of Teacher Props, Pete DeCandia. How you doing, Pete?
Hey, I'm great. Thanks for having me, Marcus. This is fun.
Yeah, man. Appreciate your time. Excited to have a conversation around mental health. So just starting out, man, can you just give us a quick background on your sports journey? Maybe if you had some mental health experiences throughout your playing career, and how that led you to being a current entrepreneur.
Yeah, so from a very early age, sports were sort of everything to me. I wasn't the best in school, but I was pretty good on the field, and I loved, any second that I was playing. Baseball was my big sport, but growing up, I played a lot of football and basketball, and just my childhood was, all outside playing anything and everything. And I was lucky enough to, go on and play basketball and baseball in high school, and then baseball at the Division I level at Mount St. Mary's University. And that was a great experience, but also, it is always something that you're asked to talk about in a positive light, but as any athlete will tell you, especially the more competitive it gets, the more stressful it becomes, and in a lot of ways less fun. So I can definitely say that my peak happiness of being an athlete was probably when I was 10, 12, those younger years. And then if you have the opportunity to be pretty decent, you put more pressure on yourself. There's more pressure on you from, these higher level teams that you're on. And when things are going well, there's nothing better. But when things aren't going so well, that is the most stress and hardest thing that any athlete or any teenager, I guess, and young adult is going to be going through, because that's everything to them as an athlete. So I can definitely relate to that. And then, so I was then lucky enough to become a teacher through Teach for America. And I coached JV baseball at Woodlawn High School in West Baltimore. And most of my kids were, I think all of them except for two of my student athletes were first time ever playing baseball. And that was a real joy for me. And they loved it. And they were just learning. So it was very much, even though they were older, similar to that experience when I was a kid, which was great. And then I continued. I coached at St. Paul's private school. I coached basketball and baseball. And then that sort of turned into a job opportunity with Under Armour, where I was the liaison between city schools and Under Armour's community impact team, where we did everything we possibly could to amplify the student athlete experience in Baltimore City schools. So that's what I've been doing for the past 6 years. I'm on my way transitioning out of that, because I've been simultaneously running a company called Teacher Props that helps teachers in Baltimore find housing. But to your question, I think that being an athlete, being a teammate, all the struggles and things that you have to persevere through have allowed me post college and after my athletic career to be nimble and be the best sort of person I can be in those roles professionally. So I'm very, very thankful for that.
Yeah, man, I love that. I love your journey, and really excited for your next chapter, man. And let me ask you this. So going back to your experiences in college, I definitely can relate. As you know, I would say I enjoyed playing high school football, but once I kind of got to the college level, realized that it was a business and how competitive it was, it kind of took my joy away from the game. So going back to your experience at Mount St. Mary's, was there like an event, maybe like an injury or like an interaction with the coach that maybe made you feel that way?
Yeah, so I had an interesting experience where my best year was my freshman year. And in retrospect, it was probably the best I'd ever felt. In my life up to that point. It was just surreal to be playing, getting a lot of playing time and pitching in big games. And our team was pretty decent. It was up until the last weekend that we didn't make the conference tournament, but we were competitive the whole way. And it was just great. I think I pitched in 13 games, and I was constantly ready to go in, and often did. And so it was just an amazing year. And then fast forward to sophomore year, my first appearance, I walked down in Florida. I walked a batter in like a 10 pitch at bat. And then I just didn't get the call for another like month to pitch. And it was just, as anyone, can relate to, the first piece of being happy playing a sport is actually playing, right? So I kind of had that experience where I wasn't getting any playing time. And after a freshman year where I got a ton and did pretty well. So that was a really, really low point. It was just a really, really tough semester, tough season. And unlike football or other sports in Division I college baseball, you're playing 52 games packed into a 2.5 months, 3 months. So that's a lot of baseball to watch and be a part of, and not get in the game. So a little torturous when all you care about is getting on the field. So that was really hard. That was probably the hardest year I had in athletics. And yeah, I was just pretty down. And it was tough to get through, and it couldn't have been different than the high I was on from my freshman year.
Definitely. Now, how did you kind of get out of that like dark like period? Was there like, did you seek therapy? Was there like a coach that kind of helped you like push through? Was there like a teammate? Was there like a person that kind of helped you get through, those highs and lows?
Yeah, I would say no. I didn't have I mean, I had great teammates, and and my coaches were pretty decent, but um I I mean, there certainly was, and I think very differently about mental health now, but a stigma around um, looking for those supports. And I wasn't going to do that. Just, it wasn't something that I thought I needed. And I kind of took the approach of, suck it up and figure it out. I actually remember when I was a freshman and one of my teammates like went to the counseling center because he was in a really bad slump, and I thought it was crazy to do that. And then a year later I was so depressed about my own playing time. Now I didn't actually go about that myself, but in retrospect, I wish I did. So um there yeah, my story in particular wasn't so much that I had all the support and then got back on my feet and things were all good. It was sort of like that was kind of the beginning of the end of my baseball career. I ended up getting hurt and decided to redshirt my junior year, so I sat out totally. Didn't play at all my junior year. In fact, I took an internship in the spring semester and was not even really a part of the team. And then I came back as a senior and I played first base. I didn't even pitch. And I, I got in a few games, but I wasn't a real contributor like I was as a freshman. And I kind of took my sophomore year just to take life beyond baseball more seriously,
Hmm.
which, was good. But looking back to, I wish I had the mentality that I have my whole life to be an adult, right? And I should have. I wish I just like kind of focused a little bit more on being an athlete, because as we all know, anyone who's graduated college, unless you become a pro, once it's over, it's kind of over. You're never going to be a part of a team that takes it that seriously again. Of course, I still play tennis and play softball, but we struggle to get people to my softball games, and no one's taking it as seriously as we did in college and high school. So that's always going to be gone once you graduate, unless you play pro. So I do wish that I you know got back at it, took it really seriously over the summer instead of taking an internship maybe, and kept playing and stuck at it.
Definitely. Yeah, it can be difficult, I guess, like in my experience, like I had like these injuries just kept piling up, and I remember one time I was like I had like re-injured my shoulder. It was like my last season. Um I was up at school the summer prior to get some work in. So like I felt like I was going to be pretty high up on the depth chart, and I was like pretty low on the depth chart, and like I said, I re-injured my shoulder, and I just like remembered like breaking down on the phone to my mom, and I was just like, I honestly just don't think I can physically or like mentally handle this anymore.
Yeah.
And like I will say that I definitely am glad, but sometimes not, because I definitely put my body through a lot more. But like I ended up sticking things out because I know that like my like kind of thought process was like, my teammates had kind of been there for me through my injuries and the struggles that I had endured. And we had, I think my freshman year, there was like 38 or like 40 of us in our recruiting class, and we were down to like our last like 12 guys. So a lot of people transferred, and we kind of had like a close like group of guys. And I just kind of had the thoughts like, yeah, I might be a little banged up, but like I know they wouldn't want to give up like on me. That was kind of like my approach. So even though I retore my labrum and bruised my ribs, had tendonitis in my knee, like at the end of the day, like my journey with football came full circle, because my senior homecoming game in high school is when I injured my foot, and then my senior homecoming game in college, scored a touchdown, and we end up winning the conference championship. And I think that obviously, like if I my football trajectory could have been completely different if I like decided to focus on the next phase, which like I slowly started to do, because the summer going into my junior year, the prior season, I did get like my first real internship in technology. So I was very much focused on like knowing like, hey, I only got a couple more years left of football. Let's, try to, give it my all, and then, start slowly focusing on, life after sports, because the transition out of sport also can be very, very difficult. And I know you talked about the stigma, back in the day. So I just wanted to get your thoughts on like, how has like the mental health conversations in athletics, how that's changed since you were playing ball to what you're currently seeing in this space.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that professionally and just from conversations, the stigma is less. There's a lot of work to still be done, but I mean, it helps too that I'm married to a psychologist. So that helps with my perception of it. Obviously, my work with Awesome for Athletes and with you is so focused on breaking down that stigma. And it's something that I think is super important, not just based on my experiences, but just knowing in particular, like the student athletes we're helping in Baltimore City, how tough life is on its own, and then adding, a lot of the stressors of sports on top of it. And like I said, if someone is a real athlete, that's their whole identity, right? Like that is who you are. So when things go wrong, your whole life is going wrong, right? So that's the truth of it. And I'm glad that there is now a narrative that you know your mind is just as important as your body when it comes to sports. So there are ways that you can take care of it, and they're actually pretty simple things like talking to people. So that is great. I would be curious, like, I think that one teammate I had at the Mount who went to the counseling center was probably the only one on the team who did that. I wonder what percentage, of kids now who are playing college sports are taking advantage of that. I think when I was there 10 years ago or so, it was a very small percentage. And it was probably most likely there were things going on outside of sports, but I think it's important that, all those stressors of what's going on the field, that's most of your day. That's pretty much everything you're thinking about when you go to bed at night, when you wake up. You know, athletes should seek out that counseling. And even if you're feeling good, right? Like just because, that's the other part of it, just because your year's not going well, or you have an injury, or, I could have been seeing a counselor, a therapist during my freshman year when things were going well, right? It's a journey. Mental health is a journey, and it doesn't mean that you have to just seek it out when you feel like things aren't going well, right? Because there's always ways to improve and different ways to think about things that are going to help you when things start to get hard. That those conversations, or things that you do, whether it's meditation, doesn't just have to be counseling, right? Are going to be important when the going gets tough. So, yeah.
No, well said. We only probably have time for about a couple more questions. So kind of going back to your experience being a coach, we're currently working on legislation here in Maryland that would require coaches at public high schools and public colleges to go through a form of mental health training. So as a former coach, I just wanted to get your thoughts or opinions on the importance of mental health training for coaches.
Yeah. So I think that it is super important. I think that, similar to teaching, right? It's like you got to meet kids where they are. And that's step number one for them to be engaged and listen and have the ability to, be a functioning part of your team and a contributor in a positive way. So I think gaining a perspective on mental health at a base level is incredibly important to coaches, just to have that going into every practice, planning for games, all the communication with the kids, just having that baseline sort of professional development is key, because like I said, you got to meet kids where they are and put yourself in their shoes. And that's not just remembering what it was like to be a teenager, but think about it from a mental health perspective, and what is this so-and-so going through if they're not playing this game, and if there's something going on at home, and all of those things that I think are critical to getting to know your kids better. That's always, as the adult who's in charge of them, it's just it's the most important part of it, right? So it's good to have your CPR in case there's an emergency, but you know what? That's probably not going to happen. But one thing that's definitely going to happen is you're going to have to be there for your kids as a coach. and support them. And they play sports so they feel good, right? So they get a sense of purpose and can have fun. So getting that training is incredibly important to make sure as coaches we can do our best to kind of fulfill that goal.
Definitely. And then you have also coaches spend more time with the athletes than their parents in season. So they're typically the first responders. So it just, makes a lot of sense. And got one, maybe two more questions here. So kind of going back to the athlete that may be struggling, what would be like one piece of advice or maybe a saying or a phrase that you would say to the athlete that may be struggling with their mental health or their confidence?
Yeah, I think one thing that is underrated and incredibly useful as an athlete, mentally and physically, is taking deep breaths in those moments. I think some folks have pointed out to me, I will take incredibly deep breaths if I need to reset myself. When I was playing basketball before a free throw, on the pitching mound, like just a really, really deep breath, and that calms your body. And that's not a saying, but it's like when your heart rate is going and your mind is wandering and maybe you're tense or stressed or whatever it may be, bring it back to, and I think there are ways to expand upon that, like real breathing techniques, but a really good deep breath has always been better than any sort of quick saying or anything I could tell myself, to sort of reset and relax, because when you're relaxed, you're always going to be better.
No, that's awesome. And I guess I can stem off that and give our listeners exercise. Actually, one of our previous guests said that this is what he utilizes when he's in game, is a form of breathing called box breathing. A lot of I think Navy SEALs and people in the military use this form of breathing, but it's basically like, imagine a box. So you inhale for 4 seconds, hold for 4 seconds, exhale for 4 seconds, hold for 4 seconds, and you just repeat that until you're more grounded, essentially. So that's one that I also use as well, and I'm a big fan of. So we have probably a couple more minutes, Pete. Just wanted to give you the opportunity to share with our listeners, your social media, maybe for Teacher Props, or just some of your goals for the upcoming year. I know you mentioned you're transitioning into Teacher Props more full time, so we'd just love to give you an opportunity for any last thoughts or remarks.
Yeah, so like I mentioned at the top of the podcast, I have been leading this relationship between Under Armour and Baltimore City Schools. I'm incredibly proud of that work. I'm handing that off to my replacement, but that project is called Project Rampart. If you Google that and check it out, if you're a Baltimore person and are a fan of Under Armour, which I hope that you are, we're doing an incredible amount of good for our student athletes in the city, from facilities to uniforms to academic supports. And it's been a great journey. I've been at it for 6 years, but I'm also very excited to be going full time in a month or so here into a business that I've started called Teacher Props on Instagram, where we're teacherprops.baltimore and teacherprops.org. We are an organization that helps educators in coming to Baltimore and within the city to find great housing. And it's been a real blessing to see that come to fruition and build that business to a place where I'm able to leave my full-time job and focus on it full time. And yeah, and thanks for having me, Marcus. This was great. It was good to talk about things outside of our typical monthly check-in.
Right, for sure, man. Definitely learned a lot more about you and your journey. Really appreciate your time, Pete. Wanted to also thank our listeners for tuning in. I'm your host, Marcus Alston of the Mindful Athletes podcast, signing out.